Welcome to Elevate Your Ride, the podcast dedicated to elevating your performance in the saddle. I'm Ellie, your personal trainer.
And I'm Lauren, your mindset coach.
All right, today we have a very special guest on the podcast, my stepdad, Jeff. So, Jeff's unique strength in life is finding success by creating a plan and executing that plan. And today we wanted to bring him on to talk about how to create a goal and achieve that goal. And Jeff is great at doing that. He has a business called Project Odie, where that's literally what he does all day long is he helps a lot of kids who are kind of in their young 20s and in high school age help find like their stride and help find what they're good at and their unique strengths and how to create a goal and a plan for life and how to achieve it. So we thought that would be a really interesting topic for us to bring him on to talk about today. So Jeff, thanks so much for coming on with us.
Well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be on the show and looking forward to where this conversation goes.
Yeah, it will be good. So something that I always hear you talking about is creating a 5-year plan. Can you talk a little bit about why the 5 years and like why that number specifically and why is creating a plan so important for achieving a goal?
You know, it's an interesting topic as to why we picked 5 years, but really at the end of the day, the reason we picked 5 years was to sort of remove the stress of time. The importance of developing a plan, is right in alignment with a lot of what Lauren talked about in episode 43 on visualization. Is like you've got to see what success looks like and sort of have this visualization of what success looks like in your mind so that when you work backwards, every choice and decision that you're making, is ultimately either in alignment with building that life for you or it's not. And in our program, what we do with a lot of young adults is we focus on 5 years out. It sort of removes the stress of today, but we start with just literally figuring out what's that vision look like, and not just in one area of your life, but really holistically, whether that's relationships, what you might be doing for work, hobbies, maybe the spiritual side, your physical fitness side. I mean, it's all part of the life that you're trying to build for yourself.
What are some of the most common struggles that people come to you with when they're looking for help in this area?
The best way to describe that's literally the first person who went through this program that we created. Her name was Betsy, and she called me. She was about 25 years old. She said, "I've got quarter life crisis." And I'm like, "Well, what's quarter life crisis? I've never heard of this." And it's really, we all get to that age or that spot in life where we start asking ourselves, what am I doing? Like, I went through school, I checked off all the boxes, I graduated, now I'm on my own. And it's almost like you're this realization that you're responsible for how your life turns out. And in today's world, we've got so much information coming at us and we've got so much visibility to opportunities, almost to the point that we freeze, right? And so I think some of those limiting beliefs get in the way. I think some of the I'm not good enough sort of mindset sometimes gets in the way. I think we forget that, we're in charge of building and creating our life and our outcomes. And, sure, it might take more work for one person than another, and there's going to be more to learn. There's always something to learn. But the struggle of not being real with what it is you really want and what it is you're trying to build.
I think you brought up a really valid point when you talk about the amount of opportunities that are out there. I heard about this concept called the curse of competency, and I feel like that's kind of along the same lines as to where there's so many opportunities. A lot of people listening to this podcast are capable of doing a lot of things and willing to put in the effort to try to do something and achieve something great. But can be so hard to dial in and focus on what that one thing is and not feel like you're running in just a million different directions. So I think that's so amazing that you've created a way for people to be able to dial in and figure out what's important to them.
Yeah, I refer to it, and I've heard a lot of people refer to the program we've created as sort of this framework, right? And I think everybody benefits when they have a framework for making choices, for making decisions, for giving critical thought to the type of life they're trying to build for them or what it is they're even trying to achieve. You mentioned the word competency. And when I hear that, it immediately takes me back to the four stages of learning. The first one's unconscious incompetence. You just don't know what you don't know. And so it can be a scary spot. But then you move into kind of this conscious incompetence where it's like this, oh, shoot moment is like, I need to go out and learn something. And that's where you got to make a choice or a decision is what do I need to go learn? And is it in alignment with what I'm trying to build for myself? Well, ultimately, as you learn and practice, you can become conscious competent where you know what to do, but you still kind of have to think through it first. And then eventually you get to this unconscious competence where you've been there, done it 1,000 times before, and it just becomes a reflex, right? I'm sure for a lot of your listeners who show horses, the very first show they ever went to was a very nerve wracking experience. But, 100, 200, 500 shows later, they're at that unconscious competence stage.
Yeah, definitely. And I like how the beginning part you talked about unconscious incompetence. And sometimes that's where I feel like the beginner's luck thing comes into play because you don't know what you don't know. So it's all great, right?
Yeah, I mean, what we do a lot in our work is we talk about, as I mentioned earlier, visualizing success. What does that look like? Let's just say 5 years down the road. And I sort of separate a vision from goals, but you visualize success. Let's say you put it in 20 different bullet points that represent, but then for each one of them, you're also going to need to figure out what fears are you going to need to manage in order to turn that vision into success. Ultimately, you need to figure out who can you enroll around you? Like nobody achieves success alone. So for each of those bullet points, what sort of team do you need to build around yourself? And then I think you get to goals. And I think of goals as being 6 months from now, how am I going to measure my progress and performance towards achieving that vision bullet point? And then from goals, is where you figure out what your next steps are. What can I do today or what can I do in the next 30 days to learn what I need to learn in order to move towards achieving that goal? And I think when you start to create a framework like that, it puts you in a position where every choice and decision you're making in a day is, again, either in alignment with your definition of success or it's not.
So at the end of the day, some people seem to achieve their goals and have success, and some people seem to struggle more and don't have success achieving their goals. What do you think has an impact on that?
I mean, there could be a lot. I think, when we live, we have unexpected events constantly kind of coming at us, and sometimes those can throw you off. I think you guys had an episode where you talked about when personal life gets busy, right? And, sometimes that's okay. I mean, it's good to go and focus somewhere else for a little bit. And sometimes that recharges you to come back and focus on those goals ultimately to achieve sort of those goals and make it easy for yourself comes down to, how bad do you want it? And also, is it in alignment with your purpose? Does it feel real? Do you feel like you're putting your unique strengths to work on a daily basis? I've found over a career that most people are happiest when they're putting their strengths to work. And so I think there's an element of alignment there and sometimes we need to step back or work with somebody else to sort of help us realign ourselves. But I think everybody has the capability to go and achieve their goals.
I think that you brought up a really good point of if your strengths don't align with your end goal, you're kind of just picking an extra battle that you might not necessarily have to fight. For example, I had an end goal of becoming a horse trainer, but at the end of the day, I did not have it in me for a number of reasons to go and ultimately achieve that goal. And for many years, I just kept chasing it because I was so darn stubborn about it that I had it in my head that that was where I was going to be successful. And I wasn't really listening or paying attention to the signs that that really was not where my strengths lied. My strengths lied in coaching people. And once I realized that I could still coach people and work with horse people at the same time, but not necessarily be a horse trainer, I figured out that I can apply some of my other strengths, like, working out had always been a passion of mine. And I figured out how to combine those. And you were actually extremely influential in helping me through that entire process. And once I was kind of able to change that goal a little bit, I've found so much more success.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's, life's a series of trials and errors. And sometimes we get locked in on something. Sometimes we can get a little stubborn. Sometimes we're doing something because we think it's going to look good or we're trying to avoid looking bad. I mean, there's a lot of thoughts that go into our decision making. But I think that when you ultimately pause and just really pause and give critical thought to like, who am I? What are my strengths? I mean, we have a great exercise we share with people to figure out those strengths where they go and they get feedback from others to help describe those strengths and they start to look at themselves, in a fresh light. But I think going through that process of pausing and sort of reevaluating is a very healthy thing for everyone to do from time to time. It helps gain clarity on really where should I be putting these strengths to work and, what brings me joy.
How long should that pause kind of be? Are you talking about a 30 minutes, 30 days? What kind of works for most people?
I think it can vary. I mean, everybody's kind of working on their own time frame, but I mean, some days, obviously, just in a day, sometimes it's good to pause for 30 minutes and just recollect your priorities and put them back into order. But when you're really giving, I think, thought to your future, it may take days, it may take a few weeks to sort of get some input from others and sort of listen and pay attention to the feedback that is fueling your soul. So I don't know if there's just one time frame. I know when we run people through our framework, it's usually about a 4 to 6 hour process, but we have them work those 4 to 6 hours over a series of a few weeks. So we're intentionally asking them to step away, give thought to the work that they just did, double check themselves. Does this feel authentic? And then sort of recircle back and edit and modify until they feel very comfortable and most importantly, confident in their plan.
I think for me, it took a while. Like when I was going through that process of trying to figure out what does success actually look like for me, and I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life, that probably took me a good 30 days to get through that. It took a while.
Yeah, so 30 days feels like a while, and I think that's a very normal time frame. I mean, I would almost argue it took you 60 days. But
It might have. It took a while. Maybe I was, maybe I was being unrealistic in my timeline. It
yeah.
took a while.
Yeah, well, we live in this world right now where you feel like you have to have the answers now. You feel, I mean, there's
Oh, for
information,
sure.
there's stuff constantly coming at us. There's this pressure that we self-inflict on ourselves to have all the answers. And what we sometimes lose is just the joy in the journey of, the joy in the journey of discovering who we are, the joy in learning what we need to learn, the joy in getting just crystal clear on, what type of life are we trying to build for ourselves? I'm a big believer that you don't go through life trying to find your purpose. Going through life is an exercise in creating your purpose and building what it is that you want to build. And I think it does take a little bit of time to reflect and sort of get all those thoughts organized to a spot where you're confident enough to start executing.
You brought up a good point of not losing yourself during the process. I think that that is pretty common to do. You have this end goal, and then along the way during your journey, you end up turning into something that was not in your plan all along. And then you maybe finally achieve that goal or don't, but you realize that along the way you kind of lost yourself. I was definitely at that point a couple years ago. And then trying to re-find yourself can be kind of challenging, but it's worth it to do it at the end instead of just saying, "Oh, but put all this time and this effort in trying to achieve this goal." But, your goals can change. They don't have to be set in stone.
Well, as you learn more, I mean, as you learn more, you become better, right? Your
Yeah.
vision of success becomes a little bit more crystal clear. And I mean, we've heard the saying a million times, you learn from failures, you learn from mistakes. But with every effort you're making, you are gaining some sort of knowledge that's going to help you refine that and help you just get clear on it. I think of the wedding that you just went through and prepared, right? Like it was all about, you had this vision of success of like creating this perfect day, and it started as a very big vision. And as you worked through it, it became more and more crystallized to the little details to where you could actually see yourself in the process and, You could see your guests enjoying themselves and like how they were enjoying themselves and how you were going to create little magical moments that nobody was expecting to the point that, people walked away and had, a really fabulous weekend.
Yeah.
That was going through that visualization and think about how many paths you went down in consideration before that thing finally got refined.
Oh, yeah. I mean, a million of them. And I'm definitely more of a big picture kind of person. Sometimes I have a hard time zoning in on the details, like for the wedding, because we planned it in less than 4 months, focusing on the details. I was just focusing on the big picture. And you actually were super helpful in helping to remind me to think about, okay, well, what about this? And what about this? Like, what about all of the little things? So it was really nice to have you be such a big part of planning all of that. You really were super helpful in helping me do all of the little things. Hi, everyone. It's your personal trainer, Ellie. If you're looking to become a stronger, more balanced, and flexible rider, I'm here to help. I offer virtual personal training sessions and customized workout plans that you can complete on your own. As a fellow competitor, I understand the physical demands riding requires, and my goal is to help you perform your best for your horse, whether you're preparing for a show or just want to improve your everyday rides. Visit lopeanddowntherailfitness.com or click on my website tab in the notes of this podcast episode to learn more. Let's work together to elevate your ride.
Well, I think it's the little things and the details and end up making, whether it's a wedding or whether it's your life. I mean, those are the things that create magical moments. Whatever you're going to do the rest of today, it's like, how do you find some magic in the little moments along the way? But at the same time, how are you finding little lessons to learn that can help you in whatever that future is that you're building for yourself?
So when we're on this path and we can see the big goal, is it better to kind of have our end goal figured out or to have some of these little tiny details along the way that then build to the end goal when we're developing this kind of plan? Where do you typically like to start?
Yeah, I always start with the big picture in mind. And that's just what does success look like 5 years from today? What does my life look like? In the work I do, what does my life look like? For some of your listeners, it might be look at the end of this weekend after I've shown this horse multiple times. What does success look like for me? And so I always start that big picture and then I work backwards, right? What fears do I need to manage? Who can I enroll to help me? What are little goals or milestones that I can track to measure my progress? And then that ultimately boils it down into what are little steps, again, that episode you did on visualization where you're just smelling the horse, you're smelling the leather and it's almost picturing all those little details, but I don't think you can get to that until you've set your mind on the big picture. Why am I actually even doing this? Right.
Yeah.
And that bigger picture, I think, is what drives the why.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's say that somebody doesn't even know how to narrow down what their big picture even looks like. How do you guide people there?
It doesn't need to be perfect. I think that's the first thing I share with them. But as once we sort of have our mind around, hey, look, let's stay open to what's possible. It doesn't have to be perfect. But I think everybody, somewhere in their mindset has a visualization of, "Oh, I'd like my life to look like X or Y or Z." But then I think ultimately it comes back to figuring out what your unique strengths are. And if you don't know your unique strengths, send a text to 5 to 10 people that you trust to be honest with you and have them simply describe back to you what they perceive your unique strengths to be. It's literally the quickest way to get your mind wrapped around the strengths that others see in you. And ultimately, those are the strengths that you want to put to work. And now there's hundreds of different ways you might be able to put those to work, but you're going to have to pick a few to start executing. And as you start executing, you'll learn and that path becomes sharper and sharper.
So once you have your big goal defined, how do you create the smaller steps to help you achieve that big goal?
I mean, I think you got to give thought to like all the resources around you. Sometimes it's other people. We can always learn something from somebody. I mean, sometimes we have very awkward, uncomfortable, or weird interactions with people, right? It's still an opportunity to learn something. Obviously, the internet's a huge resource to go and learn what we need to learn. Pay attention to people that have done what you're trying to do. The quickest path is to reach out to someone who's already maybe figured out the steps or has gone through the learning experience that you have to go through. And that can help accelerate that process. But out of that ultimately comes the steps. And sometimes if a step feels too big, take a smaller step. Sometimes the small step might be, I'm just picking up the phone and I'm calling John to ask him 3 questions. It's a relatively small step you can take, but you're going to gain something that's going to help you to your next step.
Yeah. So if a step feels too big, figure out how to make like a mini step to get to that next step.
Yeah, just
Exactly.
keep breaking it down till it's bite-sized pieces where it's not so scary.
Yeah. Well, and that's part of the magic in sort of this framework and program we've created. It's not only designed to help you figure out those steps, but we're asking the questions that are going to take you a level deeper, maybe 2 levels deeper to really start to hone in on why is this even important to you and start to develop some clarity around those steps.
What advice do you have for somebody who's making these goals and planning these steps when these goals revolve around a living, breathing animal, right? That has a mind of its own and can get hurt, or it might not be as talented as our goals want to think that it could be, or it doesn't like to do the events that we have goals in. What advice do you have?
Yeah, I think of it like a team, right? So whether it's you and your horse, or whether it's you and your coworkers, or whether it's you and your spouse, it's the same process, right? I mean, the horse will speak to you, but maybe not the way your spouse is going to speak to you. But I think it's about developing that same sort of vision and goals, but not just for you individually, but what does that look like as a team? And I think when you're working with an animal, yeah, I mean, I don't claim to know all the science and secrets behind training and developing that relationship with a horse, but I think that the best I can do is relate it to our dog, right? Like they know what you're thinking, they know what you're saying, and it's like, how do you just? I think you have to ask the questions: how do I communicate with this animal, and how do I spend time developing that relationship and nurturing it so we develop some sort of trust in one another? And I think once that trust is established, then it's sort of leading them to that vision of success and leading them to those goals that you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I love how you put that where it's about building the relationship and building the trust because that is so huge with the horses is just this putting time in with them. And that should probably be it. One of the baby steps along the way to our goals with them is just putting the time in with them and, seeing what they're capable of and what the two of you are capable of too.
I mean, I think it would make real sense. For example, if you spent 30 minutes with a horse per day, well, how do I make that an hour? Or if I'm spending an hour, how do I make it 2 hours? Right? Like how do I build on what's already being built, in terms of that relationship?
Yeah, definitely.
I think that, like you were just saying, Lauren, our industry can have a little bit of a hard time prioritizing developing the relationship with the actual horse. A lot of people in our industry, a lot of amateurs, they're working their 9 to 5 job just to pay to have the hobby and support their family and support their own goals outside of horses. A lot of times it's the trainer that's spending all the time developing the relationship with that horse. And so then you also have to factor in what the trainer's wants, needs, and goals are for you and the horse as well. It can be hard when they're the ones developing the relationship with the horse. And I think that sometimes people buy a horse with a specific goal in mind. And then the horse comes and it's either not what they thought it was going to be like, or the relationship doesn't progress. And sometimes we can have this kind of a detached goal where it's like you have this goal in mind before you've even met the horse, so before you've even developed a relationship with the horse. And that can be kind of challenging. And I think some people dig their heels in and be like, no, I wanted this specific goal and I'm going to achieve it when maybe, that's not the right goal for you or your horse. So being able to like pivot and create a different goal based on what actually happens as you spend 3 to 6 months developing a relationship with a horse, that is really important to be able to do. So Jeff, can you talk a little bit more about like how to pivot when a goal or maybe isn't suitable for you and your horse anymore.
Yeah, I think you're raising some good points. And I'm sitting here thinking of all the teams I've played on and all the sort of organizations I've been a part of. And I think that situation you're describing between a rider and their horse, I think at some point the rider needs to be mature enough to say, it's not about me, it's about us. That's a big step as an individual. It's a big step as starting to become a leader in your life. It's a big step in starting to develop the type of relationship that others want to respond to, whether it's a horse or whether it's coworkers or so forth. But at some point, it has to shift from being about you to being about you and your horse.
Yeah, that's so good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, such a good point.
Are you looking for that extra competitive edge, struggling with show pin anxiety, or looking to set and achieve meaningful goals with your horse? Schedule a session with me, Lauren, your dedicated mindset coach. As an experienced competitor, I understand the mental demands required to excel at the highest level, and am here to support you in building a plan to help you stay accountable and reaching those goals. For more information, check out laurencervelli.com or click on the website link in our show notes. Let's work together to elevate your ride.
You put this in context to life, right? So let's say you go out and you just got married, right? Well, it's no longer about you, although it is, it's about you, but it's about us, right? Like, and how
Yeah.
are we going to build the best life together? Like, how are we going to work as a partnership to nurture our relationship so that we're both building something that we're happy and satisfied? I think that same mentality applies whether you're working with a horse or a spouse or any sort of relationship.
I really like how you put it that you're building as a team and your goal needs to be team orientated. Otherwise, I mean, I would imagine there's a million stories of why focusing on an individual goal when you're on a team doesn't end up playing out.
Yeah, I mean, team success is ultimately was what's going to lead to the personal success. It's what you're doing together with someone or something that leads to that team success, but that ultimately is what ends up reflecting for that personal success.
Yeah, and with the horses, like we were talking about how a trainer is typically involved, and if they're the ones kind of riding the horse on a more regular basis, they need to be a really integral part of your goal setting as well because they're a big part of the team. Even though it is you and your horse showing, that trainer's going to have a lot of insight to be able to share with you and help build goals that are attainable. And then they're going to be able to help.
Yeah, when you think about it, there's multiple people that need to be on the same page with you and your goal. You need to be on the same page with your horse, your trainer, your spouse, your work, your family. There's a lot of pieces. It's not just about you, and it's actually not just about you and the horse.
Yeah, I mean, all that makes sense to me, and I think it's spot on. I think it's realizing that nobody achieves their personal vision of success without the help of others.
What thoughts do you have on when we're trying to achieve our goals and we have a really big goal? Let's say we want to win the world and we know the commitment that it's going to take. We know the steps that it's going to take. It's going to take a lot of hours in the saddle. It's going to take a lot of going to horse shows, getting practice, figuring things out. And during that pursuit of the goal, other areas of our life might quote unquote suffer. Let's say maybe friendships on the outside or I mean, I work shouldn't suffer, but we might have to take a few more days off of work, right? So how do we justify or not feel guilty letting some of these other things slide when we are chasing after something that means so much to us?
I think once you've defined that as being a very important goal or a very big goal for yourself, I think it's clearly communicating that with others and creating clarity and understanding. So whether it's a boss at work who now realizes how big of a deal this is for you. I found that most people are good people. Most people want to help others, but they don't always know how they can help. I think it's up to you to be able to clearly articulate to somebody else like how big this is and how important it is to you and why it's important. I don't look at it as suffering so much as you're going to need to make sacrifices. There's things you're going to need to put on hold now in order to enjoy and reap the rewards later. I think of an Olympic athlete, right, who spends years trying to be the best downhill skier in the world, right? And how much effort and time and energy goes into that. But there's a team of people around them that understand it and are supporting them. They're in alignment with them. And look, if you don't have those people on your team, then sometimes you need to, let somebody go and add somebody else to your team. But if it's that important to you, you got to go for it.
Yeah, and the shifting of the members of your team can be scary. I've definitely gone through that on a personal level and horse level and everything. And if you can kind of just endure it and have that goal guiding you to build the best team, that's definitely worth it as well in the long run.
100%. I mean, it comes back to clarity in your vision, right? Like, how clear is that vision? Are my unique strengths in alignment with that vision? And have I surrounded myself with sort of what I call energy givers, people that are going to push me and guide me and hold me accountable to that vision? I also want people that are going to push back, that they're sort of challenging that vision so that we're really thinking through, is this in alignment? Is this what we really want? It's almost like healthy confrontation, but you need those kind of people on your team too. What you don't want is to surround yourself with people that are going to drain the energy and sort of, I mean, lack of a better term, kind of suck the life out of you while you're trying to pursue X. They have zero interest in supporting it. Like that's I think what you need to sort of disassociate yourself from.
So when we're building that team and we do find ourselves surrounded by people who maybe drain the energy, how can we gracefully remove them from our our pursuit of the goals and still be able to maybe let them cheer us on from the sidelines, but not necessarily have them be our main source of contact? Because sometimes this is the barn family, sometimes it's a trainer, sometimes it's a friend, who maybe they mean well in their own way, but it doesn't resonate with us. And in order for us to be able to feel our best and accomplish things, we maybe need to leave them behind a little bit. And so how can we do that gracefully?
Yeah, I think there's a few ways to go about it. One's to tear off the band-aid and let the relationship go. That's sometimes appropriate depending on the situation. I think for the most part, when I hear that question, what resonates for me is coming back to unique strengths. I think everybody's got unique strengths. And so you may have a friend who means all the best, but just isn't the right expertise that you need around you. I think it's an exercise in looking at what are their unique strengths and how can you sort of redeploy those, or how can you channel those in a way where they can still have a positive impact, but maybe it is from the sidelines, or maybe you've got them just focused in a different area that may not be, it may not be as important as other areas, but it still creates some worth and value for the individual. That's kind of a soft way of reframing your team. Sometimes you need to sell somebody on why their expertise in a particular area is going to be more value to the overall big picture.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I could see how maybe repositioning them and also being clear with your needs and wants. Because, like you said a little bit ago, most people are good people and want to help. And if we can communicate well with them, we might be able to achieve more together than we even thought initially possible, because maybe it'll open up a new pathway for them.
Yeah. Or sometimes, you get to a certain level. I think of some of the professional golfers, even a person like Tiger Woods, right? Like, who gets to a certain level and he's executing, but he wants to get to another level, that maybe an unprecedented level that nobody's ever gone to. Well, he might he might just change his swing coach, or he might change his mindset coach, or he might surround himself with a new manager. Like, sometimes you got to make the hard decisions, but if you can redeploy, again, that's a soft way of doing it. If you need to tear off the band-aid, sometimes you got to do it. At the end of the day, it's your vision, and you're either making choices and decisions that are in alignment or you're not.
Can you talk a little bit more about alignment and what that means and why that matters so much?
Yeah, I mean, when I think of alignment, I think of it, maybe think of a circle of spokes on a wheel, right? Think of a team of people all working towards a common vision, and you've empowered everybody to make choices and decisions that are in alignment with that. It's almost like removing yourself from the vision and empowering around you to see the same vision so that you've got trust in decision making, you've got trust in the choices that are being made. But I think maybe a simple analogy is simply a husband wife, who both bring different unique strengths to a relationship, but one of them may be better with the finances of the house, while the other one might be better with the repairs in the house. Collectively, you've got a vision for how you guys want to live, but ultimately, people have different roles in getting there, but everybody's working towards that same sort of definition of success. To me, that's what alignment is. It's getting all those unique strengths working together in harmony towards what's ultimately that ultimate vision of success.
Working in alignment with your goals is something that you talk about all the time. And it's something that I had not really thought of before I heard you mention it. Where it really helped me is, let's say that I have the end goal of becoming a world champion in a specific class. And that's my ultimate end goal, right? And every minute of every day, you are posed with decisions. And every day you can either make decisions that are going to help you eventually get to that end goal or not. I can choose to spend my time sitting on the couch watching TV, or I can choose to be bettering myself by working out or going to the barn or listening to motivating podcasts. I can choose to go out and spend my money having drinks with friends and kind of being a little bit more frivolous, or I can kind of hone down on my finances and making sure that I'm saving up for that end goal. You're posed with so many options every day, and making sure that you're at the end of the day making more choices to align with your goal instead of not aligning with your goal. That's something that's been really, really helpful for me.
Hey, Elevate Your Ride fans. Are you loving our show and looking for a way to show your support? Check out our line of Elevate Your Ride merchandise. From stylish t shirts to cozy hoodies to journals and hats, we have everything you need to represent your favorite podcast. Ready to gear up? Click on the Buy Our Merchandise Here link in the podcast notes, or head on over to our website, elevateyourride.co, and click on the Store tab. Thank you for your support. Make sure to like, follow, and share our platform with your friends.
Yeah, I think it's very important for people. I think we can get lost sometimes chasing one goal. So I don't want to say it's not important to maybe sometimes do some of those other things, but I think you have to ask yourself, where am I spending the bulk of my time? And if I'm choosing to go have drinks with friends for an evening, it's okay to step away from the grind sometimes and just have another outlet. But it's might be important to continue to nurture some of those friendships. And so, I think that there's no perfect science to alignment, but at the end of the day, you got to answer to yourself, right? Like, am I doing the things and making the choices and making the decisions that are in alignment with who it is I want to become? I remember a long time ago, I attended a interesting workshop where they talked about every choice we make in life is either to look good or to avoid looking bad. And so I think when it's kind of an interesting concept when you think deep about it, but I think when you're making these choices and decisions, you equally have to be asking yourself, why am I doing this right now? Well, I'm doing it, maybe I'm making a decision to go hang out with friends today because I just need an evening to pause so I can come back tomorrow with the energy I need, regroup and get refocused. Sometimes intentionally doing that's a good thing. It's kind of like that pause that we talked about a little bit earlier in the episode. But I mean, ultimately, you need to know that most of the work that you're doing, if you really want something, you need to be comfortable with knowing that most of the work you're doing, most of the choices and decisions are in pursuit of that.
So let's walk through the steps we would take in order to achieve a goal that I have in the back of my mind. So I would like to be able to take my horse and show him in the non pro green horsemanship at the World Show for 2025. So that gives us about 13 months of getting the horse ready, going to horse shows, getting myself ready. If that's my end goal, what are some steps that I should take to help make that happen? And how do I start implementing those so I don't get too far behind as the year goes on? Because it seems like 13 months is forever, but really time's going to fly. So, how do I give myself benchmarks and make sure I stay true to my goal?
Yeah, let me ask you a few questions. First, I want to clarify there's a difference between vision and goals. I think of vision as that longer term definition of success that you're creating for yourself, which is showing your horse 13 months from now. And I break down goals as being something that you can tangibly measure in terms of your progress towards that vision of success. So let's say your vision of success is show the horse in 13 months. Let me ask you, what fear are you going to need to manage in order to turn that into reality?
I'm going to have to manage my fear of, is this going to be worth it? Because I know how much time, money, and dedication it's going to take in order to achieve something like that. Because I have set this vision and achieved this goal before. And part of that's almost scary because you know kind of what it's gonna cost you. And, that is a fear of mine of knowing what it will cost me, and I need to be okay with that. Does that make sense? Is that a
A
justifiable?
hundred, yeah, for 100% it makes sense. Sigmund Freud, who was a thinker, he used to say fears bucketed it in four fears: fear of failure, fear of success, fear of loss, or fear of rejection. What I'm hearing you say is a combination of fear of failure and a fear of loss, the loss of money and the failure of not committing to the time. Right. And so that's sort of the perspective, which are real fears. Like it doesn't, things take time and money to often create. The next thing I would say is how can you get that vision into a short sentence that you can clearly articulate to somebody else?
I am going to have my horse prepared and myself prepared as a horsewoman to show in November 2025 in the non-pro green horsemanship class.
Awesome. Next question I'm going to ask you is who can you enroll to help you achieve that vision?
Is there a limit to the amount of people that we enroll?
It might be a few people. It might be a team of people. It could be a person.
Yeah. So, my trainer, and then of course Ellie, because she's got to keep me nice and fit, and then my mom too, because she's the positive influence in my life, and my dad, and I think I think that's a pretty good team.
Yeah, it sounds like a great team. And the next question I'd ask is, all right, now let's talk about goals. So if the vision is 13 months from today, and let's just break it into 3 months. So 3 months from today, what's a goal to measure your progress and performance toward achieving that vision of success? And a goal needs to be something that's measurable so that you can identify, am I even making progress?
So I'm really glad you brought it up that way because I think that for me, I have a lot of visions and I need to have maybe a few more goals, right? And I think my mom in a roundabout way kind of gets after me for that too, is because I have a vision, but like you just said, where the goal needs to be actionable and measurable, it's I think that that's a really good point. So in 3 months, a goal for me would be to be able to perform an entire horse pattern with one hand and using my feet.
Okay. So that's measurable, right?
Yeah, because I know if I can accomplish that or not.
Okay. So then the next question I would ask, if that's your goal 3 months from today, 90 days from today, what's a step you can take in the next 2 weeks to start progress towards that goal?
Start riding one-handed instead of in a snaffle.
Yeah. So I mean, that's sort of the thinking in the process. Now you
Yeah.
might say, well, one handed feels scary to me. Maybe I have to break that into a micro step,
Yeah, like maybe one-handed
right?
half the time or one-handed for
Yeah,
3 strides.
exactly. And then once you've achieved that step, the question's going to be, what's the next step? And then what's the next step? And sometimes you can outline 3 or 4 or 5 steps, or maybe more, that are going to be, again, in alignment with that goal. But it's getting focused on whatever that step is and what's the next step. And, that's when you start to fall in love with the journey of pursuing a vision,
Yeah,
because
I
now you're enjoying the process.
Absolutely. And what happens if we start going along towards the vision and we're setting these little mini goals and we're not hitting them? Is there a point where you say, okay, let's turn the heat up and make it happen? Or, ooh, we need to adjust the vision?
It could be either or both, right? That's why you've got to go through the steps of learning. You
Hmm.
might find you achieve your goal in 30 days. And
Yeah.
then you might find I'm not setting my goals aggressive enough, right?
Yeah.
And
I'm probably
sometimes
not.
and sometimes you might be too passive in your goals. I think the more you do this, the better you get at setting goals. You realize what your capacity is over time. And then sometimes, you may try and try and try and just never get there. It may be that you have to adjust and pursue a different vision of success. I mean,
Yeah.
that's okay too. It's like staying open to what's possible. It's like Ellie's pursuit of being a horse trainer, working and working and working, and then coming to this realization that, my strengths are maybe better used in a different capacity.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that you shifted your goals because I love having you as my strength coach and now a co host here.
Oh, everything happens for a reason. It sucked when it happened, but I'm really glad that life turned out the way that it did.
Well,
Absolutely.
the fun part is it's still turning out, right?
Yeah. It's never
You know,
over,
I mean,
right?
part
So-
part of
No.
I think part of the magic of enjoying this journey is also just staying open to what's possible.
yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah,
that was
I
really,
like that.
yeah. Thank you so much for going through that process with me because it was pretty eye opening to hear that maybe I am very vision focused and not measurable goal focused enough. So that was a really cool thing to be able to learn and take back. So I'm going to
Well,
go
I think
and think about that.
I mean, if you think about it, it's very common. We all have dreams. We're inundated with stuff we see on the internet. We see everybody else's highlight reels, and we dream about what it would be like to be doing X or Y or Z. But I think you've got to work backwards and get down to those measurable goals and get down to those next steps and figure out the fears you got to manage. I mean, I think that's critical to achieving success. Let me ask you this. Now imagine if you did that in 20 different aspects of your life, not just this one particular vision, but imagine you did it, across your entire life holistically, relationships, friends, hobbies, etc.
Y'all better watch out. I'm going to be unstoppable.
Unstoppable. Oh, love.
Yes, ma'am. Killing it.
I love it.
Anyways, that's the framework that we walk people through is sort of that thinking. And we're developing an application where anybody can go through that, on their own time schedule. And it doesn't always need a one-on-one person walking them through it. But yeah, we're really excited with helping people sort of create this framework in their life to simply achieve more and live their best life.
And where can people go if they want to either get more help from you or get that framework kind of and pursue this on their own? Where can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, right. Well, our website's projectoty.com. The OTY stands for Outstanding and Talented You, or DM me on LinkedIn. I'm easy to find on LinkedIn, Jeff Otis. But yeah, reach out and happy to help.
Well, thank you very much for coming on with us today.
Well, thank
Thank
you. I can't wait to be on again someday. This was
Oh,
fun.
Yeah.
You guys are doing a great job and very inspiring. I love the niche that you've created for yourselves. It's really fun to watch you guys blowing up and making a difference.
Thank you for listening to Elevate Your Ride. Find us on Instagram and Facebook, all linked in the podcast notes. We'll see you next time. The information provided by Elevate Your Ride is for educational and informational purposes only and is not intended as medical or professional advice. While we discuss health and fitness topics related to equestrians, the content provided through this podcast is not a substitute for professional advice. The views expressed by the host and guests on Elevate Your Ride are their own and should not be taken as professional guidance. We strive to provide accurate and up to date information, but we cannot guarantee that the information will be applicable to every individual listener or that it reflects the most current research or guidelines. Before making any changes to your health and fitness routine, we strongly recommend consulting with a qualified professional who can provide personalized advice based on your individual needs and circumstances. Elevate Your Ride and its creators will not be liable for any direct, indirect, consequential, special, exemplary, or other damages arising from the use of information on this podcast. Thank you for listening to Elevate Your Ride. We are committed to providing high quality content and appreciate your trust in us as a source of information for your health and fitness journey.